All right, guys, it's time for tonight's Tool Time Award. And tonight, the honor goes to New York Post columnist Michael Goodwin. See, last week, Democratic Congressman Rush Holt introduced an amendment to a Justice Department's appropriations bill that would have withdrawn federal funds from law enforcement agencies that violate the Bill of Rights. And that seems sensible enough, right? Considering that violating the Constitution is, unconstitutional. But the amendment failed, with Republicans largely voting against it and Democrats largely voting for it. And so that prompted Goodwin to throw a hissy fit on Fox and Friends. Take a look.
In his floor speech, Holt shredded the NYPD's reputation, accused it of sloppiness, laziness, said it profiles, doesn't do its job well.
For the national Democrats to be tearing apart a city police department that has done such a good job in rooting out the terror before it happens, that's extraordinary.
Right.
All right, so Goodwin is crying about Democrats shredding the NYPD's reputation. Sorry, guys, but the NYPD doesn't need any help with that. Its warrantless surveillance of Muslim communities solely based on their religion was shocking, blatantly illegal, had to be, especially because a lot of this surveillance took place outside of New York City. Then you can add to the madness, Goodwin and Fox and Friends host Steve Doocy, they then praise these profiling programs as if they actually stopped terrorism. Now, it's true that a number of plots have been foiled in New York. Many of them were created by federal and local law enforcement, looked a lot more like entrapment. But the important thing here is that racial profiling is not really the best way to get the Muslim community on your side, especially considering they're supposed to be your best ally when it comes to stopping real plots. But such reality-based complaints, they're of no concern to Goodwin and his friends, who fail to even recognize that the profiling exists. Take a look.
We want to defund, we take away all the federal money from the New York Police Department because some media organizations and some liberal activists have accused it of profiling Muslims, which it absolutely has not done. It's followed all the law. I mean, it's been upheld in every time it's been tried, and yet there is this persistent narrative that the police are trampling on civil liberties.
Did you notice some more big-time fails here? For starters, the DOJ recently launched an investigation after the AP's extensive reporting, but it hasn't actually been tried yet in court. And if you're a regular viewer, you would have noticed much more, because we've covered how the NYPD has recently come under fire for profiling more than just Muslims. They've also targeted liberal activist groups and, through so-called stop and frisks and the Clean Halls program, innocent Black and Latino residents. And that's only getting worse. Last year, the NYPD only detained over 680,000 people in stop and frisks. In the first 3 months of this year alone, the New York Times reported that the department has already detained 200,000 people using that tactic. They're on pace to nearly double the number detained last year. And to stress the injustice here, last year over 85% of those were Black and Latino. 90% of them were also then released immediately. And of the 10% that were arrested, some of them also did nothing wrong. Take Staten Island resident Kenrick Gray, for example, seen here with his lawyer. He claims to have been detained and arrested without probable cause by Officer Michael Darjotti, an officer who was later recorded using a racial slur to describe Gray when federal investigators wiretapped him in an unrelated extortion probe. Well, Gray is going to have a chance to prove the NYPD hasn't followed all the laws, like Goodwin is claiming. He's suing the department in federal court. And the department is facing other legal challenges from civil rights activists and defense lawyers like those representing Ahmed Farhani. Farhani is being charged with terrorism, but his attorneys argue that he was targeted by New York police because he's mentally ill and an easy target for entrapment. So tomorrow, his court case is set to proceed, and his attorneys will try to have the case dismissed on the grounds that the NYPD violated the Constitution. But aren't these legal maneuvers the sort that Goodwin would describe as being politically motivated? Isn't it just liberal al-Qaeda sympathizing activists who have a problem with the NYPD here? Well, what do you think? Republican Party Ringo star and New Jersey Governor Chris Christie.
My concern is this kind of obsession that, the NYPD seems to have, that, they're the masters of the universe.
Rising stars is what I meant. Anyway, that's right, what he said. Anybody who has any desire to stop the NYPD from totally pissing on the Fourth Amendment has been speaking out against its iron-fisted tactics. But don't tell that to Michael Goodwin, or else how would he be able to scare you into believing everything that the fearmongers want you to believe about terrorism? And so for doing that, tonight Goodwin joins the other New York Post hacks who've been introduced into the Tool Time Hall of Shame.